Larry Rafferty, welcome back to the show.
Good to be back with you. How are you?
Great. Thanks for coming back on the show. Ever
Awesome.
since
Thank you. Thanks for
I had
having me.
you on the very first time, I've had a lot of text and emails from people just wanting to have you back on because they were really intrigued about some of your stories. So one of the cases that we're going to talk about today is the murder of a 14-year-old girl that happened in the south suburbs of Chicago. This is a case that I will take with me probably for the rest of my life. And I know you and I worked on this case together. And at the time, you were the commander of the South Suburban Major Crimes Task Force. And it was just such a major case at the time. So I'll let you just go ahead and start off and start talking about the case and give us a little bit of history about the case.
So it happened back October of 2011. I remember exactly where I was. It's funny how you said it was going to be one of those things where, you'll never forget. Sitting in my kitchen, I was on one of my regular days off, and it was a Thursday. I won't forget that. And I got a phone call from one of our guys, and he said, "Hey, I'm in a town, and again, it's a small, very nice town, beautiful homes, upper middle class kind of town, not a place where anything like this would happen." And he called me up and said, "Hey, I think they have something here that they're not going to be able to handle." Now, the department, it was very small. They don't have a full-time detective. To this day, they don't have a full-time detective. But they were active members of our group and our task force. And when he called me, he said, "I don't know what we have here yet. I haven't gotten to the scene, but I'll call you when I get there. But I wanted you to, get ready. And I think we're going to need you guys. And they haven't requested you guys yet, but I'm sure they're going to need you guys." So that call came over. I finished my dinner, said to myself, "Well, I better go get cleaned up." Got myself ready, jumped in the car, started heading that way, and the phone started ringing almost immediately. That detective, who's retired now, a great guy, called me and said, "Yeah, you need to get here." Hurried my ass down there, and I got there. It took me about probably 30, 35 minutes to get there. Got there, walked around the crime scene, the outside of the crime scene with them, started taking a look around and looking at things that I saw. At that time, they had told me that they believed it was a break-in. They believed that somebody had broken in and attacked the female resident, 14-year-old girl who had just come home from school. And we weren't sure exactly what happened, whether she encountered him or if he broke in and she was home at first. And then as the night kind of drew on, we realized after speaking that as the family started to arrive, if I recall, Andy, I believe we had one of the other detectives, Jerry was one of our supervisors. I think Jerry and Mike were the two that kind of got with the family and sat down with the family and kind of gave us some information back. But at that time, we realized the house was forcibly entered. And we believe what happened was our female victim walked in from school, walked into the kitchen, family room, and our offender was upstairs, the second floor, ransacking the house, burglarizing home, grabbed a knife out of the butcher block and attacked our victim. Probably one of the saddest cases I'll ever work in my life. As you know, I've remained friends with the family and the mom and dad of the girl. Just wonderful, wonderful human beings. Done such a great job and just just keeping her name around and alive. And they do all kinds of fundraisers and stuff for kids to go to college and give out scholarships in their daughter's name. And couldn't find a better way for two human beings to heal themselves and heal everything that had happened to them. Just awesome family, really good people, and friends of mine today. So, got there, started looking around, started realizing what we had. We found some evidence on the outside of the house that we thought was interesting. Got our evidence technicians coming to the scene, made the call outs of our group to get our team out there and get them rolling. Had them all, I think, stage at the police department. We gave instructions to, I think, the assistant commander or maybe one of the team leaders to get some guys out for a canvas, get them rolling. I was still at the scene working with the evidence guys and, just identifying evidence, looking at things, looking at how he possibly got in, where he exited, things like that. That was all pretty simple. Enter through the back window. And that back window ended up being really, really great evidence for us because of the way he entered a home. And he took a landscape brick and put it inside of a knit hat he was wearing. Now, this is late October, so it was getting a little bit cold, and threw the hat with the landscape brick through the window of the back of the house and entered the home. He opened the window, opened the latch, popped it open, climbed inside, went inside and started committing his burglary. And then we absolutely believe that the victim came home from school, got dropped off at school bus, and he was already inside the house. And so she encountered him when she came in. Evidence, this biggest thing we had was the rock, believe it or not. Not that rocks are evidence, but the knit hat was really huge for us. Some of the things that were taken, we did kind of an inventory. I don't recall how many bags of evidence there was. God, it was just boatloads of evidence that were removed from the house. Everything that he had touched, everything that he had kind of took out of its ordinary place where it would have been, a jewelry box, things like that, the drawers, opening and closing drawers, taking things out of out of their normal place. And those were all pieces of evidence that we gathered and collected, and we did some dusting on some of the stuff we did other kind of work on, and then some of the stuff we just sent to the lab for them to look at it and dust it. We realized some significant things were taken. The victim's cell phone was taken, and her mom had come home and discovered her and called police. Like I said, horrible case, probably one of the worst ones I think I've worked, just because a young, beautiful kid that life was just cut short, and just senselessly cut short, and just a horrible set of circumstances. It's one of those things where, if you're going to give your best effort, you're going to give it there. It was one of those cases where I think every one of us felt, hey, listen, if we're going to do some of our best work, we're going to do it tonight, and we're going to start rolling that way. Canvas was huge. First thing off the canvas we got was a couple of really good witnesses that lived down the street. If you recall, we had a witness that their home was adjacent to a small community park, very small though, almost the end of a block small. You could probably put maybe two houses, three houses on that property. That's how small it was, but it was kind of a nice little nature park. Lady was there pushing, I believe, her son or her grandson. I don't recall what it was, but guys found her down the street and ended up talking to her. She was an excellent witness. From her, we called a sketch artist out and had a sketch done late that evening. And as soon as we got that sketch out, we put together a bulletin. We gave one for local police, and we did one for more of like a community bulletin where we put the sketch on there. We didn't get in a lot of the detail of the case, and then at 4:00 that following day, we worked that case all night. Obviously, I think the first time I cut everybody loose was probably around 5 or 6 in the morning. We had gotten called out around 5 or 6 at night. We went the first 12, 14 hours straight and worked, had a list of things that we knew we wanted to do the following day, sent everybody home, let them get a couple hours of sleep, and then had everybody come back. I think 2 or 3 hours later, we all came back. We went home, got a couple hours, came back a little bit refreshed, and then we hit it. We hit the ground running. 4:00 that following afternoon, we did what we call it's a canvas, but we took the photo. We stopped traffic, and at the time where we believe the suspect was in the area, because we believe he was on foot, gathering information from what we got from our only witness, from the person who did our sketch with us. From that sketch, we did basically a roadblock is what we did. We stopped traffic right near the home. I think about 45 minutes, we handed out bulletins, probably 1,000 bulletins we passed out. We were fortunate enough. We got one family that was at that perfect spot, sitting in traffic, exiting their neighborhood, going towards another neighborhood, another adjacent town. They were in traffic waiting to go into that town, and they saw our suspect. It was a young boy, I recall. Wow, he was probably 10 years old, if I recall. He was with his mom, and just fabulous witness, and gave us a great description. Said they saw the guy, they knew what he looked like, they saw our sketch, gave a detailed description of his clothing, all the way down to his shoes, the shoes he was wearing, the type of coat he was wearing, a drawstring backpack which he had on, which we had other people say he had on. So that kind of kicked it off. But at that point, we were chasing a ghost, which I think everybody knew. We had no information. We had no idea who he was. We had no connection to the family is what we were thinking. And I recall, I believe it was that day or maybe the following day, we were still kind of at a loss. We had started pumping the sketch out to everybody. As you know, there's only so much you can do with a canvas. People only see so much. And if they don't know who the person is, it makes it that much harder. Later that afternoon, we got in touch with the FBI, Doug Seckham, who was on your podcast not too long ago. Doug had called me up. I had asked him, we talked about the case. I asked him to come out, take a look at the scene with me. Doug came out, and while we were in the kitchen in the home, Doug said to me, hey, did you give any thought about having a behavioralist look at it? Let's run the details by the behavioralist group at Quantico and see if they can give you any idea what they think. They can give you some sort of an idea on your killer, what they think he is, who they think he is, where they think he came from. Is he local? Is he not local? Let them look at it and let them kind of give you a little information, give you some ideas, maybe where to go, what to do. And and it was one of the prouder moments of my time as commander of the task force. I remember the following day, the behavioralist calling us and getting on the phone with him. And we all had notepads ready to write. And they gave us about 10 things to do. And we had done them already. We had you guys out. You guys had done them all. And that was literally just grabbing video from, any place we could. We went to the train station. We went to the bus station. We went to local businesses around. And those local businesses, we pulled video just in case he went in and bought that hat somewhere, or if he bought that drawstring backpack somewhere, or if somebody else saw him on video, or if somebody else saw him in the neighborhood. We did an extensive canvas. We literally went house to house to house. We took old police reports, reports that were reports that came in both police agencies in the surrounding area. I shouldn't say both, but I even think we looked at like 3 or 4 different departments, cases that came in for suspicious persons and suspicious people. One of the leads that we followed up was I don't know if you recall, it was a suspicious person. It was either a block or two away from the house. And that suspicious person call was that they saw a male driving a girl's bike, a small girl's bike, a 16, 18, 20-inch bike, whatever it may have been. He was driving a bike, and they thought it was odd because it was definitely a girl's bike. He's a grown man. They knew he wasn't from the neighborhood. None of the neighbors knew him as a neighbor or a friend of anyone's. They knew he was suspicious. So they called it in. Police took a report. We followed up on that report. Lo and behold, fast forward 4 or 5 days later, when we finally get him in custody, we realize who he is. We find out who he was talking to, who he was out there visiting, what brought him out to the neighborhood out there. Because if you recall, he wasn't from anywhere near there. He was from the city of Chicago. He was from the southeast side of the city of Chicago and came all the way out to the western suburb to commit a burglary and then committed a murder. That particular incident with that suspicious person on a bike ended up being our guy. And he was there a week earlier canvassing homes. We also found that he was calling realtors looking to see if the homes were occupied or not. So he was looking for somewhere to reign with his terror throughout the suburbs. But there were things like that that we had done. And one of the things they had said was the FBI was, local grocery stores, train stations, bus stations, delivery companies. We interviewed people with delivery companies, mail postal people. We had already interviewed them. Landscaping companies, we had already interviewed them. Earlier that day, the family had their landscaping company was at their house. I believe they were cutting the grass. And we knew it just because of tire marks all over the grass when we arrived at the home and the scene. I knew somebody was there earlier. And now my hope was that it wasn't some landscaper that decided to break into the house and end up murdering our victim. We had very little information to go on. At that point, we were creating our own leads. We were basically running everything down. If you recall, we put guys on the L station because one of the terrible, horrible, tragic things is that our suspect began to text the victim's mom, and we knew he was using her phone. And once we started pinging the phone that night, immediately after it happened, once we realized the phone was gone, and then he took the victim's phone, we started using a ping and trying to locate where the phone was. As we did that, we realized that the phone was running along I-55 going into the city of Chicago. We found out he took a train, but that particular incident when we realized, okay, he's not on foot anymore. You recall, we actually did take a portion of evidence and we had a bloodhound come out. Jimmy Passetti, another guy who you had on one of your podcasts. Jimmy brought his dog, Melanie, out. Melanie was a beautiful bloodhound and just a fabulous dog. I don't know if Jim told you, but the backstory on Melanie was I worked on that murder case too. I was another young girl that was murdered, and we named the dog after her. And that's where Melanie got her name. Jim came out and ran the dog that night. We knew he was on foot for a while, and then all of a sudden he was 10 o'clock at night. That phone was moving. Once we had confirmed from the family that the phone was actually taken, that's kind of when we knew he had her phone. As long as he had that phone, we knew we had a kind of a beacon of hope that we'd still find him. Started getting all the evidence processed and packaged. We had Doug come out and take a look at it at our scene with us, collected some more evidence with Doug, things that he suggested that we processed that maybe we weren't really thinking about processing. We ended up cutting the kitchen floor up in the house. There was a shoe impression on the floor that we wanted. We took shoe impression. There was just a ton of evidence. We just took pieces upon pieces of evidence out of that house. Again, 14-year-old girl. Beautiful kid that should be here with us today and isn't, and it's sad. It was just every bit of effort that we could put into that thing that we did. And it was delivery people and just simple things like that. And some people would think, oh, geez, postal people, just because they're driving around the neighborhood, did they see the guy earlier that day? Do we have another witness, a potential witness, somebody dropping off a newspaper delivery guy or a bread delivery guy who's delivering bread or food or something to someone's home? Is there a chance any of those people saw him during the day and saw him leave the area or come into the area? Was he on foot? Was he get dropped off? Things like that, which we had no clue. So that part of it was probably the busiest part of it, and getting our bulletins out, doing our canvas that way we did, finding the other witness, interviewing those witnesses then, and just kept digging. And by probably 3 or 4 days into it, we started looking at each other going, okay, what's next? We started looking to talk to the family again, to see if maybe somebody followed a family member home. Just every single incident you could possibly think of. One of the family members was in law enforcement, and we even started looking at arrests and cases that he had been involved in, just in case. Did they find out where the family lived and they decided to come back? And is this a suspect in a case that he had? And did that suspect come and try to murder a family member of his? So those are the things that we were looking at. Just as you know, just a brutal crime scene and just a terrible, terrible incident. Like you said earlier, and I think you hit it on the head. It was one of those cases that I think all of us looked at and thought, God, we got to solve this one. Regardless of what happens here, we got to solve this one.
I remember that phone call from you when you activated us. When you activate us, it was a recording that you talk into, and then you blasted out to the entire team. And I remember answering that phone, and you just sounded different. I was probably on 20, 30 calls with you. That hearing your voice that night, it was just different. You sounded a little bit more solemn. You sounded a little bit more angry, a little bit more stern. And you're like, I need everybody to respond to this police department. And I remember calling my old partner at the time, and I just go, hey, man, I go, are you coming on this? And he's like, yeah. He goes, I'm on my way to the station. We'll meet up there and we'll ride in together. And then he even made that comment. He's like, man, he goes, Larry just sounded a little bit different. And I remember getting to the PD that we were supposed to stage at. And I know I mentioned this on the first podcast with you. We were walking in, I remember one of your ETs that already was there, and then he was coming back at the station, and he was going to kind of brief us too. And I'll never forget the look on his face, even to this day. I just said, hey, man, how you doing? I called him by his name. I kind of tapped him on the shoulder, and he just looked up at me with a look that went right through me. Even he knew this was going to be a different case. And it just sent like a rush right through me. And then once we come walking into that boardroom where everybody was staging and everybody's milling around and getting ready to go, you came in and you gave a speech of all speeches. And from then, we just hit the ground running. And you would let us go home for a couple hours at a time. But we knew the severity of this case. I mean, all the cases that we've worked together, I mean, they're extremely severe. But to briefly touch on that woman that was in the park, the one witness with her grandson, didn't the suspect actually come up to her and start a small conversation with her?
Yeah, he engaged with her. Yeah, he engaged her, and which was great for our purposes. It was great because now we had someone that could identify him.
Right.
And as you know, when it came to the identification, you were there. You recall what happened and you recall how everything kind of went down. You remember how serious that was and how that woman identified him. And it was troubling for her. She engaged him, he engaged her, and they had a conversation. Thank God for us, because all that did for us was give us more of a better witness. She stood there talking to him. She heard his voice. She talked to him. He told her certain things. He said certain things. And at that time, he doesn't know. He's going to break into a house. He's thinking, I ain't gonna ever see this woman again. I'm gonna get what I get out of this house, and I'm gonna go. Well, lo and behold, he encounters our victim, and that's when it goes south. I think if he intended to go in and commit a murder, he surely wouldn't want to stand there too long with somebody. I think he'd try to keep himself from getting identified, and do something to kind of conceal himself. And he didn't. He engaged her, and it was good for us. And you're right. He came down the side of the road, came right down the side of the road, and she, I believe she had her son or grandson, I don't remember. But she had him on a swing, and I remember when the guys found her. She's a good witness. I mean, she did sketch with us, which was huge. That sketch broke the case.
It did. And then the people who were in traffic, and all of a sudden our offender was running across the street trying to get away, and lo and behold, they witnessed the guy. And I remember our witness in the car, she said, I looked at him in the eyes. He looked at me as he ran across the street. Little did she know that this guy is fleeing from a murder. And she was able to identify him as well. And we'll get into that a little bit later. Yeah. But nothing came back on her family member that was in law enforcement, right? He had nobody, he wasn't involved with anybody. So
no, but again, you're at a certain point there, you're looking for a lead when you just keep digging. And when you have nothing, sometimes you got to make your own leads. And that's a tough thing, especially in cases like that. And probably the hardest part of this is, and and if anyone and you're just going to listen to your podcast, especially in law enforcement, understands when a stranger commits a crime, it's pretty difficult. There's a lot of murders out there where strangers commit crimes and they get away with them. And it's just a fact of law enforcement. It's a fact of when the victim knows the offender, we got a better chance of solving it. When it's a whodunit, those are tough cases. And this was probably one of the tougher ones. And to your point about saying, hey, listen, we need a big one here, guys. I need you guys to hit a home run here, and we need to do our best work tonight. The fact that it's a complete stranger and it's a 14-year-old kid. I didn't say this earlier, but for me, at the time, both my kids were 15 and 13. I have two adult grown women right now, and I have grandchildren. And those girls were little girls then. 14 years ago, they were kids themselves. It's one of those cases. And I remember one night I walked in, they knew what was going on. They knew when I was gone. They knew I wasn't coming home. They knew when I came home, I was there and then gone before they woke up. Or if I was sleeping still, they'd be like, hey, my wife would always great about it. Hey, Dad's sleeping. You got to keep your voices down. He just got home, or he hasn't gotten any sleep in 3 days, and you got to let him sleep. And they understood it. They understood the role. It was one of those cases. It was great job by a bunch of dedicated, hardworking cops. And I'll take credit for being a boss, and you guys take credit for all the work you did. And you guys put that together. All I ever did was steer the ship. It was a difficult case. It was difficult because you had a beautiful family that was wrecked, and and you see the devastation. I think that's probably the hardest. Some of that stuff was the hardest thing for me, because when some people get murdered, they always say, "What did they have? What did they have in their lifestyle that led them to become a victim of a homicide?" We all know that certain lifestyles are going to get you closer to being a victim of a homicide, and certain ones aren't. And a 14-year-old girl playing on a tennis team at her local high school is not our normal victim of a homicide. And when that happened, turned that whole town upside down. You remember the outpouring. I mean,
Yeah.
we had people bringing food in for us, and every day they dropped off breakfast, lunch, and dinner for us every single day.
I remember even just being dead dog tired, and a lot of us would go out together and do a lot of follow-ups and a lot of canvassing. There was a guy and his daughter. I must have been about 8, 9 years old, and this must have been about 2 o'clock in the morning. And we step out of the car and we are just exhausted. I hear, "Sir, sir," and it was just this little girl. And I go, "Yeah." She goes, "Here, my dad and I brought this for you. Please, just thank you so much, and we appreciate your hard work." And it was like a box of coffee and some donuts,
Absolutely.
And it was 2 o'clock in the morning. And then the dad shook all of our hands, and he's just like, "Hey, I feel like I had to do something, and my daughter wanted to come
Yeah.
with me." I was so
No,
proud to
that's
be a
it's
part
kind
of
of
that.
oh, absolutely, and that's kind of that's a tribute to kind of those people that live in that neighborhood too. I mean, loving people who took care of their own. They had a little girl in their own town. That could have been any of us. We always say it as cops. I mean, that's probably the hardest part, and people don't realize that one of the things we are is we're human beings. We talked about this in our first episode when we talked our first time. We're still human beings. And some of these guys that work these cases all the time, and I did for a long time, and it's taken its toll on me. And I know that. People ask me how I sleep, but I do sleep. And it's not one of those things where I look back and go, oh, geez, everything I saw, I can't close my eyes. It was a job. It was our job. And it was someone had to speak for who we spoke for. And that to me was probably the most important part of it. And I think as cops, because we all have children, we had kids those ages. There's a lot of us that went home to families who had little girls just like our victim. And I think that was the hardest part for a lot of us. That's the whole purpose of putting forth the effort that you put forth. We worked our ass off in that case. We did not stop for
Mm.
5 straight days. By the time we got them charged, I think it was almost a full 7 days to get the charges and get a great case without a confession and a couple eyewitnesses, and then just all the electronic evidence that we had and things like that. Obviously, the physical evidence turned into be huge, but all the leads that we did, I think we did almost 300 leads on that case. And towards the end there, as we realized who we had and who we were looking for, once we got them in custody, all that work that we had put together had finally come together. And then when we presented it, I know they were there for a few hours, but that state attorney's office was not there that long, and they charged that case pretty damn quickly. So we had a really, really nice case. What was the jury out? 2 hours, an hour and a half? On
Right.
him. I mean, an hour, and he was found guilty. He was given a couple of consecutive life sentences, or 100 years plus, whatever it was. I mean, those are the cases that when you work those things, you look back and you think about the good work you did, and again, God's work, as far as I'm concerned. And when you do that work, and it hits home differently than other cases. You work a lot of cases over the years. You work a lot of innocent victims, a lot of really good people who lose their lives. I'm not saying that, but when it's a kid, as you know, it's always different for us because we're all dads, we're all moms. So when cops look at it, they go, "Hey, that could have been my house. That could have been my family. That could have been my daughter coming home from school. That could have been my kid getting off that bus." So I think that part of it is made it that much more personal for us. We knew we had to do a good job. And that's what I wanted from you guys. I wanted you guys to know the seriousness of it. I wanted you to know that we had a family that was absolutely grieving and devastated, and we had a beautiful young girl that we had to speak for. And you guys did, man. I give the credit to all the guys that were out there and just worked their ass off and ran and ran and ran for five straight days and ran down some crazy shit that had nothing to do with anything, and we still ran it down just because we didn't want to give up. Running down police reports from other towns because they had similar MOs or maybe a similar description, or suspicious person, suspicious auto. All the people that we found and located and talked to and interviewed on that case, and all the physical evidence and all the ET work that went into that house, and hundreds of pieces of evidence that went in, and things like that. And then just a great group of prosecutors too, to win that case and put it together and win it, and have a jury out for an hour.
After the third, fourth day, or during some of our briefings, we were like, man, we were kind of like at a dead end because we were running like crazy, and we were following up on all these leads. We were at one point, it wasn't long, but we were kind of looking at each other going, where do we go from here? And we still kept following up on leads. And I remember one morning after you cut us loose and we were coming back, there was a buzz in the room. I'm just like, what's going on? And they're like, we think we identified who did this. Walk us through how that came to fruition.
Sure. I'll say this, the sketch was huge. As you know, we put the sketch out. We sent it out to all the surrounding agencies, anyone in the area. It went out everywhere. When that sketch went out, police officer from an adjoining town right next door came in a roll call after being off his 3 or 4 days off, and came in a roll call that night, saw the photo. And one of his bosses was on our group. Jerry got a phone call from that officer. And that officer said, "Hey, I think I know who this guy is." And he said, "I'm going to run over to the gas station over on Willow Springs Road." And he said, I'm going to look in the gas station and see if I can pull the video and take a look at this guy. But I got a call there about 4 hours after the murder. You guys are saying this happened around 4 o'clock. About 8 o'clock, I got a call there, which this guy being on foot, we knew he was on foot. We knew he was walking. We had a bloodhound trace him all the way back towards I-55, which was south of where we were, and through the woods. So the officer went on the scene, pulled the video from that night, gave us a description: drawstring backpack, flannel, the hoodie with the denim sleeves, the jeans, and a pair of skater shoes. Was exactly what we were looking for. I sent 2 guys over to, that was about, I think I cut the majority of guys loose. I think I told you guys, go home and get some sleep. I think we were already there 4 days in a row. I was still there when that phone call came in, and I sent Jerry over there. Jerry called me up and goes, "This is him." I said, "How do you know?" He goes, "He's got the skater shoes on. He's got the drawstring backpack. This is him." We pulled the video, got it over there. The great thing was the officer was sharp, smart kid, and a 2829, which is a wanted check on him, ran a 29 on him, ran his name and date of birth. From the name and date of birth, we found out he was on parole. I called the contact at parole, got on the phone with him, and said, "I need a favor." I said, "I need to find out if this suspect is still on parole. Has he checked in? When has he checked in?" Called me back and said, "Yes, he is." And he checked in on Tuesday, which was the day we found the video. Got all his information. The next morning, the first thing I did was call a lab because I knew we had that hat, and I knew that hat was going to be our key. I called them, gave him his information. He was a convicted felon. He had been out of the penitentiary just for a short time, either 3 or 6 months, if I recall. And I'm not 100% sure if it was 3 or 6. It was one or the other. Called them, gave him his SID number. They pulled his last swab that they gave him leaving the penitentiary, and we asked for it to be worked up immediately. We identified him. We knew where he was. We ended up doing a series of search warrants. It was on the south side of Chicago. I remember that. Was it on his house?
And his sister's house, I believe, too.
Okay. Yeah, I do remember that because we found some clothes in the washer, and we thought maybe those were the clothes he had on. We assumed maybe he had, we were looking for the skater shoes. We never found skater shoes. Did a really, really thorough search of that house. We had the ETs photograph it and stuff. And then I recall that there was some stuff in the, I want to say in the washer and dryer, that they were already being washed, and we're not sure 100% whether that was our stuff or not. My guess is that he shit canned all those clothes, or he put them somewhere else, dumped them. He may have hid them somewhere away from the house from where we did the search warrant. But he was still at large after that. We couldn't find him. And then the following day, I believe it was that Wednesday afternoon, we got him into custody at 95th and Dan Ryan, and took him into custody there, got him back. Got our witnesses ready for a lineup, put him in a lineup. It was identified by all 3 witnesses, wasn't it? I believe there was 3 witnesses that identified him. He didn't give a statement. He was kind of all over the place. I do recall that. I recall the interview and when the interview went down. And obviously wasn't going to cooperate at all with us. He was kind of all over the place. Called the state's attorney's office late that afternoon, and once we had him in custody, we had him identified. And God, by 10 o'clock that night, they issued charges. We got first-degree murder charges on him. I think it was that Thursday we ended up with charges. Just looking back at that scene, thinking, God, are we ever going to find this guy? One of the things that was in my head the whole time is let's do everything just in case we don't solve this. If we don't identify this guy, we don't get a DNA hit, and we don't end up with anything like that. Let's do everything we can. So video footage is kept. Somebody can go back in 3 years from now and look at video footage. And if he went into a bar, if he went into a grocery store, if he walked into Walgreens, if he walked into a place, a business around the area there, we pulled video from everywhere. The train station, we pulled video from the bus station. Lo and behold, he left that train station, that bus station, ended up taking a taxi and went into the city of Chicago and jumped on the Orange Line. But if you recall, we had that detective from Chicago that was retired, and he was doing all the CTA stuff, and he helped us
That's
out with
right.
video. He was awesome guy, just a really, really helpful old timer. And I remember his crazy mustache, and just did a great job for us pulling video and getting all the information that he could for us. Search warrant inside the taxi cab drivers, because when the officer encountered him in the adjoining town next door, he ended up calling a taxi. He jumped into a taxi, and then he went from there. And when he got in the taxi, they drove him into the city of Chicago, where he ended up jumping on a train to take him home. That's where that night at 10 o'clock at night, we had his phone going off around 5. That was him getting on that train and taking off along I-55 on the train. So things like that, like later, you're like, oh boy, now this makes sense. This is why this happened. But just like I said, I couldn't be more proud and couldn't be more happy, and to be able to tell that family that we had gotten justice for that little girl was huge. I remember Doug saying it. They felt inclined to go to AJ Frem's. And I don't go to wakes for victims of our cases that we worked, but this one I was compelled to. And the state police were there, and they let me in early. And I ran in and said a prayer, and I promised her that we would have him charged by the end of the day, and we would have handcuffs on him and have him charged by the end of the day. And lo and behold, you guys did it. And got my promise to her, which meant a lot. And it was one of those cases, and every one of us saw our own kids in that little girl. And that was that nonstop attitude that you all had and everybody kept with, and we didn't stop. I tell people all the time, those 7 days of just straight plugging away and lead after lead after lead after lead, and just running and running and running, trying to keep you guys encouraged and keep you working and keep you going when you're all missing your own families then, and you're all missing time with your own kids. Those were the tough ones. Those were tough days. But we knew what the goal was. The goal is let's get this son of a bitch off the street so he just doesn't ever do this again to another child. And, that was the goal for us. And we did it, from the assistant commanders, supervisors, every single investigator that was out there, and just a great job. I was so proud of the work that everybody did. And we got our accolades from it, Bob. We were all recognized a few times for it, and we had some great honors from some great organizations that brought us forward. And if you recall, the family took us out to lunch that day. They took every investigator out to lunch, and what a wonderful gesture from just a nice group of people. And your heart breaks for the family. Work some nasty, nasty cases and some nasty shit. And it takes its toll on you, and it takes its mental toll on you, and, its physical toll on you. But I couldn't be more proud of you guys that day.
Well, thank you. It was such a team effort, and I was honored and humbled to be a part of that team. When I got that call, my daughter was only, maybe 3 years old, and I was getting dressed, and I just came home from work, and she's like, Daddy, where are you going? And I just said, hey, I got to go to work. And she goes, well, you just got home from work. I'm like, yeah, well, I got to go back. This little 3-year-old girl, she demanded to know why I was going back to work this particular night. And I just said, listen, sweetheart. And I finally told her, I said, there's someone that was out there tonight, this man who hurt a little girl tonight, and it's Daddy's job, along with a couple other detectives. We're supposed to go out there, and we're going to try to find this guy so he doesn't hurt another little girl again. So she's like, okay, Daddy. And she gives me a big hug. And every night for a week, it didn't matter if we walked in the door at 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 in the morning. If she was sleeping, I would go check on her in her bed. And she would kind of wake up real quick, and she'd be like, Daddy, did you catch that bad guy who hurt that little girl? And I go, not yet, sweetheart, not yet. And I remember the night that we caught her, just butt tired. I walked into her room, and I just checked on her, and she woke up, and she's like, Daddy, did you catch that bad guy who hurt that little girl? And I go, yes, sweetheart. I said, me and all my friends, I said, we ended up catching her. And I'll never forget, Larry, she just gave me a big hug around the neck, and she gave me a kiss on the cheek, and she kind of sat back in her bed, and she's like, Daddy, I'm so proud of you and all your friends who caught that bad guy. And I'll tell you what, I walked out of that room and I kind of put my head up against the wall outside her room. I'm going to be honest, I cried.
Yeah. It was an emotional case.
I
I
did.
remember, I tell everybody when I talk about this case, as you know, I teach a basic homicide class. And when I talk about this case and I kind of talk about the guys that worked on it, I always said one of the biggest things is we had the state's attorney's office there and they were reviewing the case and kind of putting everything together with us, and we're going back and forth. They're doing their interviews and they're writing up their file. And I told everybody, I said, hey, listen, they're here. If everybody's tired, you guys haven't been home in 7 days, get out of here, go on home. I'll put a message out to you guys in a little while as soon as they approve charges. And I remember a couple of the guys walking up to me and going, hey, we all want to stay. And I said, listen, if you guys want to stay, stay. This is your work. I won't take anything away from you guys. Stay as long as you want. I just don't want you to be away from your families anymore. And I remember when I walked out, I believe I told you we got first degree murder charges approved, and you guys all kind of, in like a sigh and kind of like a little, kind of a cheer. I remember all you guys kind of grabbing each other and hugging each other, and and that's that bond, and that was a bond that we had with a lot of those guys and a lot of those guys that worked in that group, and and we've lost a few of those people, believe it or not, as you know, and it was just one of the guys I met years ago, and this guy named Vernon Gebreth, and he's written a bunch of books, and one of his sayings is we talked about it before, you work for God, and that couldn't be more true. And especially when you get a girl who's your innocent victim and was out, coming home from school like any of our kids do every single day. I thought about Doug a lot. I reached out to him after I saw the podcast and I saw the emotion come out of him. And it's another little kid, and it's a little boy that should be playing baseball right now, enjoying his life and doing whatever little boys do. And he can't. And that's the sad part. And now I'm a grandpa now, I'm an old man. And I'm a grandpa, and I see my grandkids, and I don't know how I'd ever get through anything like that ever happening to any of them. And I talked about that family, and they're just wonderful people. And I've said it, and I meant it from the bottom of my heart, to do what they've done for society after society has just absolutely devastated them in that happening. And then all they can do is try to go back and be good to other kids, other people's kids, and it's a testament to them and a testament to kind of people they are. And when you work for people like that and you look back in those 7 days compared to what those people went through are nothing. And we could never replace her, but what we could do, we could speak for her. And we did.
I truly believe that God does put great teams together, but it also starts with amazing leadership, with guys like you and Scotty and all the other supervisors that were on that team.
There's a lot of good people on the team.
Yeah, we had some amazing people on that team.
Matt and Randy, and a whole mess of them. A lot of good guys that came from the other team just to come out to help.
Right.
Just one of those life experiences for all of us, and something we'll never forget. And a part of it is never forgetting why we were together and who we were there for. So
God bless that family that was involved. And this is a case that I will never ever forget for a multitude of reasons. And I was blessed and honored to be a part of it, to be able to work with you, to be able to bring this poor girl justice. But Larry, thank you for being on the podcast. I'm going to have you back on again. We'll talk about a few cases. We'll review a couple more of them and talk about them. Hopefully someone can learn from this. Yeah, definitely. Me too. I'll put all my information down in the description. I'll put Larry's email down in the description, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks again, Larry.
Thank you, buddy. You have a good night. Take care of yourself.
You too, pal.
Bye-bye.